creating cultural awareness and understanding. This is Culture Clique. Culture Clique is written and produced by KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University.
For 50 years, the nationally syndicated radio show In Black America has given voice to people of color, and John L. Hanson Jr. has hosted the show for the last 40 of those 50 years. John L. Hanson Jr. has interviewed everyone from artists to athletes, and he's seen a lot. But there's always more to see and hear. Today, to commemorate the show's 50th year, we talked to John L. Hanson Jr. about everything from his journey as a young kid from Detroit moving to Austin, Texas, to a decidedly hot interview with Aretha Franklin. I'm Bill Stoneberg with KQAL's Doug Westerman and the host of In Black America, John L. Hanson Jr. on today's Culture Clique. I'm here with John L. Hanson Jr. today. He is the host of In Black America. And I'm also here with KQAL's Doug Westerman. We're going to talk to John L. Hanson today about the show. It has been running for 50 years, it looks like. John, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm blessed. How are you? And thank you for having me on.
Oh, thanks for joining us. And In Black America is a show that we air, and we air it Sundays at 11.
We appreciate that. The program has been on the air for 50 straight years. I've been the producer for the last 40.
Ooh. Dang.
In radio, that's 2 lifetimes.
Right.
At least.
Yeah, really.
It's unheard of in today's radio.
Correct.
Right, yeah, for sure. So you have been producing it for 40 years. It's been on for 50. How did you originally become involved in the show?
Well, in 1974, when I had hair, I was a nighttime disc jockey at KUT Radio.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone remember, back in the 70s, there weren't that many African-American voices on the air. Long story short, prior to me taking over the producing and hosting of the program, the original host, Judon Boney, had graduated from the University of Texas. It was his idea to have a African-American talk show. He had 3 shows. He had the African-American talk show, Syndicated. He had a television program, and then he had the music program that I initially started producing when I came to KUT.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1980, there was another African-American station that went online, and management thought that since there was a full-time African-American station, my program, which was the only African-American program in Austin, I would be better served if I did the syndicated program. Then, according to them, I would have a bigger impact. So in 1980, I took over the program. But also prior to that, the program was produced by other UT professional professors.
Mm-hmm.
And you had academicians talking to academicians. So you can kind of imagine how those conversations went.
Yeah.
We understand that.
Wake me up when you're done. Okay.
Right.
Exactly. So when I was approached to start producing the program, well, the program was basically in Black Austin. Everyone that more than likely 99.9% was a UT professor that was African American or someone coming to campus to lecture to African American. So my suggestion was, if it's going to be in Black America, it needed to reflect in Black America.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So they said yes. They gave me a travel budget, and my thinking was back then, the only thing they can tell me is no if they don't want to do the interview. So I just started calling people. Red Jet, Ebony, Black Enterprise, New York Times, any publication I could find to get ideas to do the program. And that's how I originally, for me, got started doing the program.
Okay. So the 50-year mark obviously is it's a capstone event for the program itself, but I mean, it's coming at such a great time, I would imagine, from not in terms of the unrest, but in terms of the message.
It is amazing that how things actually work out in the long term. No one probably could script this, that in 50 years, this program will be on the air at this point in time in our history. and it just goes to show you what resilience and stick-to-itiveness will get you.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that the show is like just as relevant or maybe even more relevant now than it has been?
I think it's just as relevant because I find it amazing after 40 years, I'm still interviewing people who are the first at whatever they doing.
Yes.
And I would not have imagined that in 2020, you still have African Americans being the first of any type of occupation or endeavor. It's just amazing.
It's a head scratcher.
And then you still have first generation African American students going to college.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing is, I noticed on the KUT website it said that you are the only nationally broadcast Black-oriented public affairs program. Why do you think that is? Why do you think, or how can we maybe change that?
It's a commitment from whoever the originating station or production house, and it's a commitment from the station, but it's also a commitment. Whoever's producing the program is going to, stand up, because I'm not saying that there hasn't been any hurdles that we had to jump over, during the course of these 50 years, because in reality, money is always a problem in public radio, if nothing else. So you have to speak your case to management when budget cutting time, and we went through a period where Corporation of Public Broadcasting was being threatened by Congress, not being funded, and then state budgets were being decreased, and UT is a state institution, so we had to trim the budget here, trim the budget there, and by and large, minority programs, and that probably just as well as I do, is that when it comes time to start trimming the budget, the first thing they look at is minority programming, and to their outward thinking that this types of program can be included in other programs, and that's you can, but that's not so the case, because then it gets locked up in the wash, and then at some point it becomes insignificant, and then at another point it's not there any longer.
John L. Hanson is our guest. He's our host of In Black America, 11 o'clock Sunday mornings here on KQAL. It's produced at KUT, and just for our listeners, it's in Austin, Texas. KUT, University of Texas in Austin, is where he has that produced. How did you make your way to Austin?
That is an interesting story.
I like interesting stories.
I was at a state track meet. It was an AAU track meet, and one of the coaches from another team came up to me after the track meet and asked, had I ever thought about attending Houston-Tillerson College's university now?
Mm-hmm.
And I had never heard of the institution.
And where were you running track?
This was in Michigan.
Okay.
It was the state AAU competition in Michigan in 1967.
Okay.
And after the track meet, he came up, and his name was Mr. Gaddy. God bless his soul. He got a lot of young African Americans from the inner city to attend colleges. Well, he had gone to school with Dr. John King, who was the president of Houston-Tillerson.
Okay.
And he said, well, if you think about attending Houston-Tillerson, I can get you a scholarship, athletic scholarship. Long story short, I went home, talked to my parents. They agreed, and I caught my first flight and came to Austin to attend Houston-Tillerson on an athletic scholarship.
Wow.
During that period, I was always interested in radio. I had worked as an intern at a radio station in Detroit.
Which one?
WJLB in Detroit. Worked for Ken Bell.
Okay.
So after I came to Austin, I got a job at a local, well, it wasn't very local, it was like 30 miles south of of Austin, Lockhart, Texas, KHRB. Started working there and worked there through my college years. And then 4 consecutive years I tried to get a job at KUT, returned down. I guess the 4th time was a charm. In 1974, I eventually got hired.
So going back to your youth, black kid from Detroit going to Austin, Texas at age 18. What was that like culturally?
It was a big shock.
Yeah.
And just to illustrate how awkward it was, I left Detroit, and it was in August. So in Detroit, it was maybe in the lower 70s, upper 60s. So I had my athletic leather sweater on, which was 100% wool.
Of course.
We had to stop in Dallas, and back in the 60s, they didn't have the jetway, so you actually exit the plane onto the runway. Well, I get off of Brandon's airline. Brandon's is not an airline anymore.
They had the colorful tails and
exactly. They were the precursor to Southwest, I guess. I don't know.
Sure.
Anyway, got off the plane in a leather sweater that's 100% and wool, and it's like 98 degrees.
Oh.
And I just broke in a sweat. But long story short, it was because I actually thought by watching television that people in Texas, rode horses all the time.
Sure.
I didn't know any better.
Right.
The thing I saw, what I saw on television. But eventually I got acclimated to somewhat. I still haven't got really acclimated to the heat. But I've survived these 60-some years now.
You described it a little bit in the early part of our conversation, but what made you kind of want to get out of the music side and go into the spoken word, more, dare I say, thought-provoking? Because my whole background has been primarily in spoken word as well. So because I see it as a more of a foreground listening experience versus a background listening experience, things like that. So, you're a young DJ and you think you want to do this for 20, 30, 40 years, and play stacks of wax and whatnot. What kind of triggered you going into, this is kind of smarter, this is kind of what I think I see myself doing more than, the 7 to midnight disc jockey who at midnight's going to go out and chase chicks?
Interesting you asked that. My train of thought was I didn't want to be 50 and 60 years old playing records. I wanted my kids to think that their dad had actually grown up and became an adult. That was my thinking when I accepted the in Black America position. Ironically, I also do now the music program that I initially started doing when I came to KUT in the 70s.
Oh, wow.
So I've gone full circle.
Is that soul?
I do in Black America, but I also do an old school dance party music program every Friday.
Is that soul on FM?
That's soul on FM.
Oh, cool.
Is that just on your station?
Just on our station, yeah.
Oh.
I'll have to listen to that.
Yeah, we'll have to stream it.
So you're doing like 1960s Spinners,
I'm
Temptations,
doing
Jackson
60s,
5.
70s, early 80s music.
You're doing your Hitsville, USA stuff from your hometown.
Yeah, Motown, Stax, Philly International, Atlantic.
I got a question about that. Like growing up in Detroit and getting into radio at an early age, how exciting was that with all the music happening up there?
It was the teenage lifestyle of a lifetime.
Exactly.
I couldn't sing, so the next best thing I could do was at least play the music. But it was amazing. I mean, music was everywhere, and I am talking about all type of music. I mean, it was rock, it was country, it was R&B, it was salsa. We had all the different ethnic groups in the city, and basically all of them had a particular radio station. So you can just go up and down the dial 24/7, and the announcers, and that's what really drew me to industry.
Me too.
The announcers were just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they got the chops that they had, but they were just smooth.
Yeah, I mean, our stories are similar in the fact that I had this little Zenith AM transistor
Mine
radio.
had the alligator clips on that I used to clip
Oh,
to
wow.
the side of the lamp.
Oh, wow. To increase the antenna, so to
Increase
speak.
the reception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should know that word after 100 years, but I would, like you said, you hear those announcers coming in from San Antonio, Chicago, Detroit, Colorado, and then I just remember where you grew up, there was a WJR, the big AM radio station. They had a show on overnights called Night Flight, and the announcer would he would take you to imaginary. Tonight we're going to fly into Philadelphia and listen. And then, here's a nice young group from 1974, Hall & Oates. It's like going, oh, my gosh.
Right.
And it's like, now when I hear something from Hall & Oates, I'm thinking, that just means I'm old.
Or have good taste.
Right. Exactly.
John, I kind of want to get back to something we mentioned earlier about relevance and kind of breaking through that type of thing. What do you think about podcasting, like the popularity of that? Do you think that will help not only maybe shows like In Black America, but help young people get into it and get noticed and
have a voice?
Have a voice, yes.
I was asked that question on another interview, and my answer to that is yes. It allows more voices, and it allows more voices with different points of view.
Mm-hmm.
And I think anytime that you can disseminate different ideas to a larger audience is a good thing.
Yeah.
And what has happened now with the conglomeration of radio, you have only so many companies that own stations.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have stations that are operated by other individuals in other locations. So it takes the localization, if I can coin a word, out of what radio was intended to be. It was intended, from my perspective and my understanding, to be a commodity that local communities could enjoy and reflect their particular lifestyle and living standards.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not so the case anymore. It's all about corporations making money, and you have a cluster of announcers, God knows where, broadcasting to 10 and 15 radio stations in different locales that they have no idea what is actually going on in those cities. So podcast is a good thing, and anytime, like I said, you could disseminate more ideas to more people in different parts of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And with the technology that we have now makes it easier for that endeavor to take place. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Right.
I think that, the localization has really kind of waned the last 15 years or so, and I tell
Wayne is an understatement.
Yeah, I'm trying to be nice, but I tell students in class that a Main Street business has become a Wall Street business, and it's not all good.
Right.
No.
Speaking of that, what about student-run radio, like college and high school? How important of a role do you think that plays?
Now I think it plays a significant part for the fact that, and you probably can attest to this, when we were growing up, we had access to radio stations.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually go into a radio station, and they would oblige you for just being the fly on the wall. Okay, just sit there and watch. You can't do that anymore. Due to the fact the way society is, security, and the other thing I mentioned, some radio stations, there's no one there but the receptionist because the people that operate the station are someplace else.
Right.
Yep.
So the only way that a young person nowadays, broadcast schools are not as prevalent as they once were. So if you're not part of a college process, there's very little, if any, that you can enter this business. as a person from the outside without having any connection with someone that's on the inside.
Great point.
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give young people who want to do broadcasting as a career?
I think just
go to Winona State
or UT.
I would suggest, just like when I started out, you have to have a passion, and that's the first thing, because you're not gonna get rich. I mean, you won't starve to death, but you're not gonna get rich, by and large, unless you one of the lucky Howard Sterns out there somewhere. And I don't think that's gonna happen to too many people down the road.
Not the three of us.
Right.
Exactly. So having said that, having the passion and willing to not take no for an answer, I think will get you over the hump. But I mean, you're going to have to be tenacious, because you're going to run into some walls, and I'm quite sure you have. And I was discouraged, came to Austin, and had worked like I said, intern at a radio station in Detroit for 2 years, and came to Austin. And it took me a while to just get in the door. And then when I got in the door, they said I wasn't good enough. I had this problem, and it was discouraging. But I kept my chin up, and took the slaps and kept rolling, and eventually, I landed on my feet in Lockhart, and then I landed on my feet at KUT. So you got to be able to roll with the punches.
Keep fighting.
Persevere, for sure. Yeah. I'm kind of curious. You had mentioned before how you just started calling people and just started calling for content and guests. What do you have, like a most memorable guest, or someone that, a process that you had to go through to get a guest that was, is there a cool story you can tell us from back then?
Well, probably the coolest story is I had always wanted to interview Aretha Franklin. And back in the late 70s, and you all may remember this, the Budweiser Beer Company had a traveling festival. It was called the Budweiser Superfest.
Okay.
And for a number of years, they had concerts that they put all over the country. So I can't remember the exact year. Anyway, it was coming to Dallas at the Cotton Bowl in the summer, hotter than I don't know what. So I had written her people to try to do the interview. Well, they said yes, I could do the interview.
And this was via snail mail.
Right.
This is via snail. Yeah, this is all phone and mail.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's crazy.
You had to work for it.
Yeah, exactly.
And wait for it.
And hope whoever that you were told to send this information to actually received it. But once they received it, they actually read it.
Right.
So, long story short, Aretha gets to Dallas. It is hot. I mean, very hot.
Sure.
Her trailer, air conditioned, doesn't work. So besides it being hot outside, she was hot literally and figuratively.
Gotcha.
Right.
So she was not into doing anything with anybody.
Unless it had something to do with staying cool.
Right.
Exactly. So I told her manager to tell her that I really wanted to interview her, and my grandmother was a member of her father's church, which she was.
Very good.
Nice.
And that's the only reason. So we sweated for like 10 to 15 minutes in her trailer. But the only reason she agreed to do the interview is because her manager told her that I said that my grandmother was a member of her father's church.
Oh, wow.
Whatever,
that's about the best. That's the best story.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to the Queen of Soul.
That's it.
That's fantastic.
What? How do you? I mean, you talk to so many people in across so many professions in terms of medical, artists, authors. Are you looking forward to talking to politicians nowadays?
When I can. They are not at the top of my calling list.
Right now, no.
Right.
Not right now. And, now, because of the fairness doctrine, if you talk to one, and if they're running for office, you need to, search out and talk to the other one equal time.
Yeah.
And for right now, I am not into doing equal time.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, after the election process comes and goes, then I may consider doing politicians. But 9 times out of 10, and you probably can attest to this, politicians are going to say what's going to be in the best interest for them in the long term.
Right.
So you really don't get a straight answer from them about anything. So right now, I don't need that.
Yeah.
Right.
So you told us the great story about Aretha Franklin. When you're doing what you do or what we do for a number of years, but when you're doing a talk program and you do all these interviews, was there like 1 or 2 takeaways from 1 or 2 subjects that kind of like stick out that maybe even something you apply to life?
Interesting question. Some time ago, maybe about 10, 15 years, I used to cover, I think it was the National Black Education something. Anyway, Clonita Ford. She was, and I can't, after so long, you forget the title of these organizations.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was a professor.
What was her name? I'm sorry, we didn't get the name.
Clonita Ford.
Clonita Ford.
Clonita Ford. It was an organization that she founded and did masterful work with. She was a professor at Florida A&M University. Came from a small town in Oklahoma where I think she said almost 80% of her high school graduating class obtained PhDs. Never heard of that before.
Whoa, wow.
80%, and it was like a small town in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez.
80% of her high school graduating class, all of them obtained PhD. Anyway, during this time, she brought in a lot of African-American intellectual educators, college presidents. Anyway, one individual's name was Reverend Samuel D. Proctor. I always talk about it when people ask me about interviews that really had changed or made a significant impact on what I do. Anyway, Dr. Proctor was president of Virginia Union. He was pastor emeritus of Abyssinian Baptist Church. That's the church that oh boy, I can't think of his name. Congressman from New York, Adam Clayton Powell.
Okay.
Was the church that he originally pastored. Anyway, Reverend Proctor talked about his dad, and I was interviewing him. He said, "Mr. Hanson, no one ever, interviewed people like my dad. Steady man, brought his paycheck home to his wife, took care of his family, never missed a day of work, and just was an upstanding citizen. Nobody ever, interviewed individuals like that." And it got me to thinking is that we don't. For one, we don't come across them, or we don't seek them out. And that made an impact in that is that by seeing his dad do what he did for so many years made him the man that he became.
Mm-hmm.
And that struck with me is that if more individuals, regardless of their ethnicity, had dads like Reverend Proctor's dad, I think the world would be a much better place.
Yeah. We we tend to, not intentionally, but we don't tend to get enough perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it's because of where you live or how you're raised. You know, you have to go from, Minneapolis to Philadelphia, from Detroit to Austin, or from your small town, Bill, to Winona.
Right. There are a few cities in between.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So
how far are you all from Minneapolis?
we are about 2 hours south. If you look at Minneapolis, find the Mississippi River. Follow the Mississippi River, and you should find Winona. If you find La Crosse, you've gone past Winona, then go back north.
Okay. Because I was up in Minneapolis, for the, 2 years ago. I think, 2 years ago for the Super Bowl?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my blood had gotten thinner.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
It was, well, that, and then it started snowing.
Well, yeah.
And I said, nah, I think I need to keep my butt close, which really worked out because everything was out at Mall of America. So
yeah,
they had all the hotels out there. It was close to the airport, and I didn't want to be that adventurous.
You didn't go down to the university campus. I think was it Philadelphia was at the U of M, and then New England was out by the mall and whatnot?
No, whatever they took us on the bus, that's where I went.
Okay.
And the hotel was right maybe a quarter of a mile, half mile, from Mall of America. So
you were outside maybe a total of 7 minutes during the whole time.
Right.
The
longest time I stood outside is that, which was real crazy, because we had to go through all this security procedure.
Yeah.
To get in, and it's freezing outside.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was just amazed how they were able to construct that stadium right downtown in the middle of that residential area. I mean, this is just nuts.
Well, and before that, it's on the same footprint as the old Metrodome.
It is?
Yeah.
Because I had gone there before the last time they had the Super Bowl, and they had the blizzard that came through there.
Yep.
Which was insane. But I had no clue of the geography, geography of where I was, and between the Metrodome and then
U.S. Bank,
the U.S. Bank Stadium.
Yeah, they tore down the Metrodome, and the Vikings played 2 seasons in the Gophers Stadium outside before moving into U.S. Bank.
Okay.
So great talking to you.
Yes.
Bill, Doug, thanks for having me.
Well, Gal, this was fantastic.
Excellent.
Thank you for joining us, and congratulations on your success. And this is a riot. John L. Hanson Jr. in Black America, Sunday mornings at 11 here on KQAL.
Yeah, and hope we have many, many more years of it, John. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you all for being a part of In Black America Nation, and we appreciate your support. And tell your listeners we greatly appreciate them listening on a weekly basis.
Thanks again to John L. Hanson Jr., the host of In Black America, for joining us today on Culture Clique. In Black America can be heard at 11 a.m. Sundays right here on 89.5 KQAL. For more information on In Black America, go to KUT.org. To keep up on all things Winona and the surrounding area, tune into Culture Clique Thursdays at 12:30 right here on 89.5 KQAL. I'm Bill Stoneberg, and we've just heard from the host of In Black America, John L. Hanson Jr., on Culture Clique.
Creating cultural awareness and understanding. You've been listening to Culture Clique. Support for Culture Clique is made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Culture Clique is produced by KQAL FM on the campus of Winona State University. For more information, look us up on the web at kqal.org. And thanks for listening to Culture Clique.